Hello everyone, welcome to the last hour of current electricity, which is the part 4. In this hour, we will focus on devices. Which devices? Galvanometer, ammeter, voltmeter, meter bridge, and towards the end, we will talk about potentiometer. Out of all these things, potentiometer I will say is the most important thing. So without wasting time, let's start learning the fourth hour. And the first thing we are going to talk about is galvanometer. So first of all, what is a galvanometer? Galvanometer is a simple device in which when the current flows through it, the needle shows a deflection. If the current goes from left to right, the needle deflects towards right, let's say by some angle theta, and if the current goes from right to left, then the needle deflects towards left by some angle theta. We know that for a galvanometer, the deflection in the needle, which is the angle theta, is directly proportional to the current flowing through it. So the current flowing is directly proportional to the deviation shown by the needle. So if you double the current flowing in the galvanometer, then the deflection becomes double. If you triple the current flowing through the galvanometer, then the deflection becomes triple. Understand that both ammeter and voltmeter are based on galvanometer. So ammeter, which is used to measure current, and voltmeter, which is used to measure potential drop, both of them are based on galvanometer. So they are nothing but galvanometer which has been recalibrated to be used as ammeter or voltmeter. So first of all, let's talk about ammeter. What is an ammeter? Sir, ammeter is a device used to measure current. The reading on the ammeter shows that how much current flows in the circuit. Now let's say you have this line containing some battery, some resistance, and let's say some current is flowing through this particular line. We know that when objects are connected in series, same current flow through them. If your mission is to measure current, you need to connect the device in series. So remember that ammeter is always connected in series with the circuit. The job of ammeter is to measure current, and in the series combination we get the same current flowing through every single instrument. That's why we always connect ammeter in series. What is the job of ammeter? To measure the current. Why are you using the device to measure the current in a particular line? Now, we know that ammeter is connected in series, yes. But if, let's say, we use an ammeter of very high resistance, let's say of 10 kilo ohm, very high resistance, then once connected in series, it will change the resistance of the line. If it will change the resistance of the line, it will change the current flowing through the line. If you wish to have a proper reading through the ammeter, the resistance of the ammeter should be small. To make you understand this, let me take a very simple example. Let's say we have a battery and the battery has some internal resistance and we have got one load resistance connected to it. Our mission is to find what is the current flowing through this particular load resistance once the circuit is completed. If we wish to measure the current, we will connect an ammeter in series, right? Now, once you connect an ammeter in series, since it is made up of some material, it will have some resistance, yes. Now, let's say the resistance of this particular ammeter is R dash. So you will say before connecting the ammeter, the current in the circuit would have been E upon R plus R. And after connecting the ammeter, the reading, let's say I dash, will be equals to E upon R plus R plus R dash. If you want the ammeter to give accurate reading, this quantity should be nearly equal to E upon R plus R. And if you want this reading to be nearly same as E upon R plus R, then this quantity R dash should tend to 0. So remember that the job of ammeter is to measure current. It is connected in series. Since it is connected in series and we want the current in the circuit not to change drastically on connection of ammeter, that's why we use an ammeter of very low resistance. So the lesser the resistance of ammeter, the better. The lesser the resistance of the ammeter, the more accurate reading the ammeter will give. Now, for an ideal ammeter, remember that the resistance should be equal to 0. If this is an ideal ammeter, the best ammeter which gives the best reading, for such an ammeter, the resistance should be very less and the minimum resistance you can have is 0. So for an ideal ammeter, the resistance should be 0. So now let's talk about voltmeter. As the name itself suggests, voltmeter, the device used to measure voltage. That is the device used to measure potential drop. So voltmeter is a device used to measure potential difference. Potential difference between what? Potential difference between any 2 points on a circuit. So let's say here we have got some part of a circuit and there are 2 points on the circuit, point A and point B. Our mission is to find the potential difference between the point A and point B. Okay. So how do you think we will measure the potential difference between point A and point B? By connecting a voltmeter. Now, the voltmeter should be connected in series or it should be connected in parallel. Sir, we have learned that in series the current is same. In parallel the potential difference is same. The job of the voltmeter is to measure the potential drop. Hence, the voltmeter must be connected in parallel. So remember this line, a voltmeter is connected in parallel between the 2 points about which you wish to find the potential difference. The next question comes. If you are connecting voltmeter in parallel in a circuit, for example, think that you have here a battery of 20 volt and you have got 3 resistances. Okay. And let's say these resistances are 5 ohm, 3 ohm and 2 ohm. And you wish to measure the potential difference between point A and B. What will you do? Sir, we will connect a voltmeter. When you connect here a voltmeter between the 2 points, since voltmeter is a real world instrument, yes, so on connecting the voltmeter, the resistance of the part will change. If the resistance of the part will change, the current flowing in the circuit will change. Yes, sir. The question is, what has to be the value of resistance of an ideal voltmeter so that it do not change the potential difference between point A and point B? You will say, sir, for the reading of the system not to change on connection of voltmeter, the resistance of the circuit shouldn't change. Now, the resistance of the circuit between point A and point B before installing the voltmeter was 5. 3 plus 2, 5. After installing the voltmeter, you have got this resistance of 3 plus 2, 5, and in parallel you have got voltmeter. Let's say the resistance of this voltmeter is R. The resistance of this combination after placing the voltmeter of resistance R will be equal to 5R upon 5 plus R. If you want this final resistance to be same as original, what has to be the value of R? So the easiest way to solve this is divide both the numerator and denominator by R. When you do so, you get 5 upon 5 by R plus 1. And you want this final resistance of 5 upon 5 by R plus 1 to be equal to the original resistance of 5. And for this to happen, this quantity 5 by R should be 0. And for 5 by R to be 0, the resistance has to be infinity. So for an ideal voltmeter, which do not alter the resistance of the circuit at all, the resistance should be infinity. So first, ammeter. Ammeter is used to measure current. Yes, it is connected in series. Since it is connected in series, so as not to alter the resistance of circuit, its resistance should be as low as possible. For an ideal ammeter, the resistance should be 0. Voltmeter is a device used to measure potential drop. Since it is being used to measure the potential drop, it has to be connected in parallel. When you connect it in parallel, so as not to alter the resistance of the circuit, the resistance of the voltmeter should be infinity. But you can't have infinite resistance. So what do? We choose as high value of resistance as possible. So we say that for a voltmeter, the higher the resistance, the better. The higher the resistance, the less it will alter the resistance of the circuit and the better reading your voltmeter will give. So for a voltmeter, the higher the resistance, the better. For an ideal voltmeter, we say that resistance has to be infinity. So for an ideal voltmeter, resistance is infinity. These are the points which you need to know about ammeter and voltmeter before we start using them in questions. Now, I have told you guys both ammeters and voltmeters are based on galvanometers. What are galvanometers? Simple devices in which the deflection of the needle is directly proportional to the current flowing through it. So now the big thing, how to convert a galvanometer into an ammeter. Why do we use an ammeter? So we use an ammeter to measure the current. Let's say you have a galvanometer, and let's say through this particular galvanometer the maximum current that can flow is 2 ampere. This means that this galvanometer shows full scale deflection. The needle deflects to the maximum when 2 ampere of current flows through it. Now, let's say the resistance of this particular galvanometer is 2 ohm. So question is, if this galvanometer shows full scale deflection for a current of 2 ampere, tell me what is the maximum potential drop that can be applied to the galvanometer. So you will say it shows the maximum deflection for a current of 2 ampere. Its resistance is 2 ohm. So as to drive a current of 2 ampere through a resistance of 2 ohm, the applied potential drop has to be 4 volt. But let's say you need an ammeter which can measure current up to 20 ampere. But the current that can flow through this galvanometer maximum is 2 ampere. You need an ammeter which can measure current up to 20 ampere. So it means that the ammeter should show full scale deflection when a current of 20 ampere goes through it. But sir, if you try to send more than 2 ampere of current in this galvanometer, the galvanometer will get destroyed. So we say that we will create an alternate path for the remaining current to go, and this alternate path is called shunt. We will say we will make a setup such that when 20 ampere of current goes into the galvanometer and shunt configuration, the current going through the galvanometer will be 2 ampere and the galvanometer will show full scale deflection. And we will call the combination of the shunt and galvanometer as our ammeter. So the combination of shunt and galvanometer is our ammeter. In this whole combination, the current entering is 20 ampere. When the current entering is 20 ampere, out of the 20 ampere, only 2 ampere goes through the galvanometer. This means that the remaining 18 ampere must be going through the shunt. Now there will be questions like, determine the shunt resistance for doing so. So you will say, see sir, the shunt and galvanometer are connected in parallel. Yes. So the potential drop across both of them have to be same. If through a shunt of, let's say, resistance small r, a current of 18 ampere is passing, and it has the same potential drop as across a galvanometer of resistance 2 ohm through which 2 ampere of current is passing. So you will say, since both of them are in parallel, the current through the shunt multiplied by shunt resistance has to be same as the current through the galvanometer multiplied by galvanometer resistance. So you will get here 18 into R has to be equals to 2 into 2. Hence the shunt resistance required is 4 by 18, that is 2 by 9. So this is how we convert a galvanometer to ammeter. So say we have a galvanometer through which the maximum current that can flow is Ig. Assume that we have a galvanometer through which the maximum current that can flow is Ig. We wish to convert it into an ammeter which can measure a maximum current Ia such that Ia is greater than Ig. Just like in the example I said that the maximum current that can flow through the galvanometer is 2 ampere, but we need to have an ammeter which shows full scale deflection when a current of 20 ampere passes through it. So what did we do? Sir, we created a system. We created an alternate path so that when the current of 20 ampere enters into the ammeter, only 2 ampere of current goes into the galvanometer and the galvanometer shows full scale deflection. So here again we will create the same type of system. So we connect a shunt, an alternate path for the excess current to flow. We want that in the ammeter a current of Ia should go, but the maximum current that can flow through the galvanometer is Ig. So we will create an alternate path for the remaining current Ia minus Ig to flow. So let's say this is our galvanometer through which the maximum current that can go is Ig. But we wish to measure a maximum current of Ia, the current that can be measured by the ammeter. So we attach an alternate path which is called shunt. Let's say the shunt resistance is S. If into the whole combination of shunt and galvanometer, which will be combinedly called the ammeter, a current Ia enters, then the current going into the galvanometer has to be maximum Ig. So the remaining part of current Ia minus Ig will go into the shunt. Now, since we know that shunt and galvanometer are connected in parallel and their whole parallel combination is our ammeter, we can say that the potential drop across shunt has to be same as the potential drop across galvanometer. The potential drop across the shunt will be equals to Ia minus Ig into S, current into resistance, and the potential drop across galvanometer will be Ig into G. So we get Ia minus Ig into S. This is the potential drop across the shunt. This has to be equals to Ig into G. So from here, kids, you get that the shunt resistance that has to be placed has to be equals to the maximum current that can go through the galvanometer multiplied by the resistance of galvanometer upon the current that you want through the system, that is through the ammeter, minus the current that can maximum flow through the galvanometer. Let's move on to a question. Determine the shunt resistance required to convert a galvanometer of resistance 5 ohm which can withstand a maximum potential drop of 25 volt to convert it into an ammeter of range 100 ampere. Once more, determine the shunt resistance required to convert a galvanometer of resistance 5 ohm. So galvanometer has got resistance of 5 ohm which can withstand a maximum potential drop of 25 volt. So we know that the galvanometer has a resistance of 5 ohm and it can withstand a maximum potential drop of 25 volt. If the galvanometer can withstand the maximum potential drop of 25 volt and its resistance is 5 ohm, can you tell me what can be the maximum current flowing through this galvanometer? So you will say that, sir, the current maximum has to be potential drop maximum upon resistance. So that will be 25 by 5. Hence the maximum current that can flow through this galvanometer has to be 5 ampere. Now the maximum current that can flow through the galvanometer is 5 ampere. They are asking me how much shunt resistance has to be connected in parallel to the galvanometer to convert it into an ammeter of range 100 ampere. Now you want an ammeter of range 100 ampere. The maximum current through the galvanometer can be 5 ampere. So you will need to create an alternate path for the remaining 95 ampere to go, because you want the maximum current to flow through the combination through the ammeter to be 100 ampere. So 95 ampere of current out of the 100 will flow through the shunt and 5 ampere of current will flow through the galvanometer, and from there you can find out the value of shunt resistance. How? Let's see. So if the galvanometer can withstand a maximum potential drop of 25 volt, so you will say the maximum current that can flow through the galvanometer has to be the maximum potential drop it can withstand, that is 25 divided by resistance 5. So the maximum current that can flow through the galvanometer is 5 ampere. You wish to have an ammeter of 100 ampere range. So think of the galvanometer and the shunt combination. Now this whole galvanometer plus shunt will be our ammeter, which can measure up to a maximum of 100 ampere. So if 100 ampere of current enters the combination, out of this the maximum current that can go through the galvanometer is 5 ampere. It means that the remaining 95 ampere will go through the shunt. Our mission is to find the shunt resistance. What to do? So simple. Balance the potential. So you will say the shunt resistance multiplied by the current flowing through the shunt has to be equal to galvanometer resistance multiplied by the current going through the galvanometer. So you will say 5 into G, and the galvanometer resistance is given as 5 ohm, equals to 95 into S, which is the shunt resistance. Substituting the value of G as 5, you will get 5 into 5 equals to 95 into S. So S comes out to be 25 by 95. Cancel out by a factor of 5 in numerator denominator. So you get 5 by 19 ohm. So this has to be the value of shunt resistance, 5 by 19 ohm. So now we will talk about converting galvanometer to voltmeter. Let's say they have given me a galvanometer, and this galvanometer is of 5 ohm, and the galvanometer shows full scale deflection for a current of 20 ampere. If the galvanometer shows full scale deflection for a current of 20 ampere, can you tell me how much potential drop has to be applied across the galvanometer for it to show full scale deflection? So you will say that the potential drop has to be equals to I into R. Current is 20, resistance is 5. So the potential drop that has to be applied is 20 into 5, which is 100 volt. So a potential drop of 100 volt has to be applied across this galvanometer for it to show full scale deflection. Now they will ask you questions like this. What should be done with this galvanometer so that it can be used to measure a potential drop of up to 1000 volt? You wish to measure a potential drop of up to 1000 volt while you know that the maximum potential drop across this galvanometer can be 100 volt. So we say that we will place one more resistance in series with this galvanometer. And since the maximum possible current through the galvanometer is 20 ampere, the maximum possible series combination can be 20 ampere. And we will treat this galvanometer and series resistance as our voltmeter. And we will say the potential drop across this combination of galvanometer and series resistance should be equals to 1000 volt when a current of 20 ampere flows. So we will say 20 into 5 plus R should be equals to 1000, or 5 plus R has to be equals to 1000 by 20, and 1000 by 20 gives you 50. So the resistance that has to be connected in series has to be 45 ohm. So we place one more series resistance so that the galvanometer and series resistance combination, which is called the voltmeter, will have a greater potential drop across it. So the same type of theory, let's learn it. If we wish to convert a galvanometer to voltmeter, so to increase the maximum potential drop across voltmeter, we connect a resistance in series. If the maximum current that can flow through the galvanometer is Ig, the maximum potential drop we can have across the galvanometer is Ig into G. So if we have a galvanometer of resistance G through which the maximum current flow can be Ig, so we will say that the maximum potential drop across the galvanometer Vg has to be equals to Ig into G. Now, so as to increase the potential drop, we attach one more series resistance. So this is galvanometer and we have placed a series resistance R, and we call the combination of this galvanometer and series resistance to be our voltmeter. Now as you have placed one more resistance in series, the potential drop across the voltmeter will be higher. Now let's say the potential drop across this voltmeter maximum is Vv, so Vv has to be equals to Ig into G plus R. Now dividing both the sides, you can say Vg upon Vv equals to G upon G plus R. Okay? Or you can bring this G plus R up here, G down here, and write Vv equals to Vg into G plus R upon G. That is what is written here. Now why we have written this in this particular fashion? Because our mission is to find the series resistance. So you can rearrange this and write Vv by Vg, bring this down, equals to G plus R by G, or G plus R by G can be written as 1 plus R by G. Now bring this one to the left hand side, so you get R by G equals to Vv by Vg minus 1, or the series resistance has to be equals to G into Vv by Vg minus 1. Now once you have this formula, I will suggest you not to remember it. Don't waste your time remembering these types of useless formulas. Then sir, what to do? Treat the question on the face value. When the question comes, think over it, what is the data given and what are they asking? For example, let's see this question. Determine the resistance to be connected in series to a galvanometer of resistance 5 ohm which can show full scale deflection on current of 1 ampere so as to measure a potential drop of 200 volt. So you have got a galvanometer of how much resistance? 5 ohm. The maximum current through the galvanometer can be 1 ampere. They are asking you to make a voltmeter which can measure a potential drop of 200 volt. So you will say with the galvanometer I can place a series resistance, and across this whole combination of galvanometer and series resistance, which I call my voltmeter, the potential drop should be 200 volt when a current of 1 ampere flows. Right? This is the idea. No need to remember any formula here. So you will say simply 1 into G plus R equals to 200. So G plus R equals to 200. 200 divided by 1 is 200. And they have given you that the resistance of galvanometer is 5. So 5 plus R equals to 200, or the series resistance required is 195 ohm. This is how simple questions are of converting galvanometer to ammeter and galvanometer to voltmeter. So let's see this question once again strategically. So you know that through the galvanometer, the maximum current that can flow is 1 ampere. The galvanometer and resistance combination is your voltmeter. And across this voltmeter, you want a potential drop of 200 volt. So you will simply write the equation 1 into G plus R equals to 200. So 1 into 5 plus R equals to 200, or you will simply say R has to be 195 ohm. Such simple calculations, right? Let's move on. Now we will talk about something called a meter bridge. The whole name is meter bridge. Meter bridge. Why the name meter bridge? Because the length of the wire used is 1 meter. That's why the term meter. And the second term bridge, because it is based on the concept of Wheatstone bridge. That's why the name meter bridge. The length of the wire used is 1 meter, and it is based on the concept of Wheatstone bridge. That's why the name meter bridge. Now what exactly is a meter bridge? So meter bridge is based on the concept of balanced Wheatstone bridge. It is used to compare two resistances. So let's say you have got two resistances with you, let's say R1 and R2. Using a meter bridge, this device, you can find out the ratio of R1 by R2. And if you know one of them, you can find the value of another one. So where do we use the meter bridge? Meter bridge is used to compare two resistances. If you know one of them, you can find the value of other. If you know none of them, you can simply find out the ratio of resistances. So how does it work? Let's see. So in meter bridge, we have got this type of circuit. There are these thick metal plates. Thick metal plates have got lesser resistance. Remember that resistance equals to rho L by A. So greater the cross-sectional area of a plate, lower is its resistance. So here we have got thick metal plates. Here we have a wire. The length of this wire is 1 meter. That's why the name meter in the meter bridge. Now we have got a cell which drives some current in the circuit, and the cell will definitely have some internal resistance because we are talking about real world apparatuses. So in real world, every cell must have some internal resistance, let's say R. Now here you can see there are two gaps. In these two gaps, we place the two resistances which have to be compared. Let's say those are R1 and R2. Now this one definitely is called the left gap, and this one is called the right gap. So in this diagram, in the left gap we have got resistance R1, and in the right gap we have got resistance R2. Now how do we use a meter bridge? We connect a galvanometer through a wire from this middle point, and we move the jockey over this 1 meter length of wire. For certain position of jockey, we observe that no current flows through the galvanometer. If no current flows through the galvanometer, it means that no current flows through this line. This means that the resistance R1, this much length of wire, the resistance R2, and this much length of wire, these four form a balanced Wheatstone bridge. That's why no current flows through R5. If you have got a balanced Wheatstone bridge, let's say like this, R1, R2, R3, R4, and one more resistance here, we have got galvanometer R5. For galvanometer to show no deflection, for no current to flow through R5, what is the condition? So condition is that R1, R4 should be equals to R2, R3, or R1 by R3 should be equals to R2 by R4, then no current flows through R5. So once you find a place, let's say at distance x, for which no current flows through the galvanometer. The galvanometer shows no reading. You will say the resistance R1, this much length of wire, the resistance R2, and this much length of wire. These four form a balanced Wheatstone bridge. Now, if you have got this wire of length X, what will be its resistance? So you will say, sir, the resistance of this much part has to be equal to the resistivity of this wire into the length of the wire, which is X, upon the cross-sectional area of the wire using rho L by A. And the resistance of the length 1 minus X. Sir, why you wrote 1 minus X? Beta, the overall length is 1 meter. If the null point means the position for which no current flows through the galvanometer. If the null point is found at distance X from the left end, then the length of the wire from the right end has to be 1 minus X, because the whole length of wire is 1 meter. So you will say the jockey is moved. This part is called jockey. The jockey is moved on the wire till the deflection in the galvanometer becomes 0. Once the deflection in the galvanometer becomes 0, you know that you have got condition of balanced Wheatstone bridge. So you can say R1 into resistance of this wire, which is rho into its length 1 minus X upon A, has to be equals to R2 into resistance of this wire, which will be equals to rho into its length X upon A. On both the sides, you can cancel out rho, A. So you will get R1 into 1 minus X equals to R2 into X, or you can rewrite it as R1 by R2 equals to X upon 1 minus X. So if you are in a lab where you have got meter bridge with you, if you know R1, you can do the experiment, find out X, and then calculate the value of R2. If you don't know both R1 and R2, both the resistances are unknown to you, you can still use the meter bridge, place them in the two gaps, move the jockey, find the balance length X, and then using this equation you can find the ratio of their resistances. So if the balance length is X meter, then R1 by R2 is X upon 1 minus X meter. Do notice that in this step, we cancelled out resistivity and the cross-sectional area. These type of questions are asked. In the meter bridge, if the cross-sectional area of this wire is increased, what will happen to the position of null point? No reading. So you will say, sir, the cross-sectional area get cancelled. The position of null point, the position of zero deflection, is independent of the cross-sectional area of the wire. Moreover, it is independent of the resistivity of this wire, as those terms gets cancelled. So remember that the position of null point, the position of the jockey for which no current flows through the galvanometer, is independent of resistivity of wire and its cross-sectional area, because these two terms gets cancelled anyway. Okay, let's move on. Important points that you should know about a meter bridge. So let's say we have got here a balanced meter bridge. In the left gap, we have got resistance R1. In the right gap, we have got resistance R2. So the points are, first point, if R1 is increased, so how will you increase the resistance? You can replace the resistor with a higher resistor, right? Or you can heat it up. On heating a particular resistor, what happens? That on heating a particular resistor, its resistance increases. So if they say that if R1 increases, the null point will shift to right. So the new null point will be found somewhere here. Sir, how can you say this? See better. Can I say that R1 upon X equals to R2 upon 1 minus X? Yes, sir. So if you increase R1, so as to maintain the ratio, the X should also increase. That's why on increasing R1, the null point shift towards right. Keep this in mind. Second thing, bachcho, if R2 increases, then the null point will shift towards left. Why? Because we know that R1 upon X equals to R2 upon 1 minus X. So as to have the ratio balanced, if R2 increases, then beta this quantity 1 minus X should also increase. and for 1 minus x to increase, the x will decrease, and for x to decrease, the null point should move towards the left. So if R2 increases, the null point shift towards left. Next point, if another resistance is connected in series with R1, if let's say with the R1 you connect one more resistance R in series, the null point will shift towards right. Doesn't this have to be true? Why? Sir, if you place one more resistance in series with R1, the overall resistance placed in the left gap increases. And if the overall resistance placed in the left gap increases, then X should increase so as to balance the ratio. That's why the null point will shift towards right. Next point, if another resistance is connected in parallel with R1, the null point will shift towards left. If you place one more resistance in parallel with R1, then you will say that we know that in case of parallel combination, the equivalent resistance decreases. Since the equivalent resistance decreases, the overall resistance in the left gap decreases. If the overall resistance in the left gap decreases, then for R1 by X to be equals to R2 upon 1 minus X, if the overall resistance in the left gap decreases, X should decrease so as to balance the ratio. Okay. The fifth point, the null point is independent of resistivity and cross-sectional area of the wire. This is something we have already discussed. The position of null point has nothing to do with the resistivity of this meter long wire as well as with the cross-sectional area of this meter long wire. Okay. Let's do a question, and only one question based on meter bridge that you must know. So the question goes like, on interchanging the two resistances in the two gaps, the null point shifts by 20 centimeter. So if you take out R1 and R2 and place R1 in place of R2 and R2 in place of R1, on interchanging the two resistances, the null point shifts by 20 centimeter. Find the ratio of resistances of higher to smaller. So if R1 is greater than R2, what is R1 by R2? And if R2 is greater than R1, what is R2 by R1? That is your mission to find. So you will say, okay, let's say first we found the null point here at some distance x. And on interchanging, the whole kind of meter bridge circuit flips. So if originally on placing R1 and R2, you get the balance length at distance x from the left end, then on interchanging them, placing here R2 and placing here R1, the new balance length will be found at distance x from the right end. So this is what the new balance position will look like on interchanging position of R1 and R2. And as per the problem statement, they have told me that the null point shifts from old to new by a distance of 20 centimeter. So this distance is x, this distance is 20, this distance is x. You can find out the value of x. How? You will say that x plus 20 plus x plus 20 plus x equals to 100 centimeter. Sir, why are you saying 100 centimeter? Because this wire has got length of 1 meter and 1 meter is same as 100 centimeter. That's why I am saying 100 centimeter. So you will say x plus 20 plus x equals to 100 centimeter. So here you will get 2x equals to 80, or x comes out to be equals to 40 centimeter. So this length is 40 centimeter. So sir, this means that the remaining length has to be 60 centimeter. So you can say that R1 by 40 equals to R2 by 60. Once you know that R1 by R2, rearrange it, R1 by R2 equals to 40 by 60, you get that R1 by R2 equals to 2 by 3. But in the question they have asked me larger to smaller. So we do not have to report R1 by R2. We need to report R2 by R1. So R2 by R1 will be equals to 3:2. Larger to smaller ratio will be 3:2. So this brings us to the last device that we need to talk about, that is potentiometer. Now many a times students find potentiometer tough. Potentiometer is very simple, given that you can answer this question. If you can answer this question, potentiometer is done right now. You have a wire, okay? Let's say on the left end of wire, the potential is 80 volt. On the right end of wire, the potential is 20 volt. And the length of this wire is 5 meter. There are 2 points on this wire, point X and point Y, separated by distance of 2 meter. your mission is to tell me two things. Which point will be at higher potential, X or Y? Second thing, what is Vx minus Vy? So you will say, sir, your first question, which point will be at higher potential, X or Y? I can answer it simply. On moving from left to right, the potential is decreasing. Yes. So the current must be flowing from left to right. Yes. If the current is flowing from left to right, X must be at higher potential than Y, because this wire is nothing but a resistor. And current in a resistor flows from higher potential to lower. So first thing first, potential at X has to be greater than potential at Y. The second question, what is the potential difference between X and Y? So you will say, sir, very simple question. You can see that in the length of 5 meter, in the whole length of 5 meter, the potential drops by how much? So 60 volt. How did you get this 60? 80 minus 20, 60 volt. So if in the length of 5 meter, the potential drops by 60 volt, what will be the potential gradient? Field. Yes, potential gradient is nothing but field. What will be the potential gradient? So sir, in the length of 5 meter, the potential drops by 60 volt. So you will say that the potential drop per unit length will be 60 by 5. That will be 12 volt per meter. Yes. So in every 1 meter, the potential drops by 12 volt. You are asking me the potential difference between 2 points X and Y separated by 2 meter. Then the potential difference between these 2 points X and Y separated by 2 meter has to be 24 volt. Because in 1 meter, the potential drops by 12 volt. So in 2 meters, the potential will drop by 24 volt. So the answer has to be 24 volt. That's all. If you haven't got this, try to get the answer to this one. If you get the answer to this one, I promise you, you won't find any problem in potentiometer, because potentiometer is essentially this concept. So let's say you have a wire of length 5 meter. On the left end, the potential is 100 volt. On the right end, the potential is 80 volt. Can you tell me the potential difference between 2 points A and B separated by 2 meter? So you will say, sir, see, 100 volt of potential here, 80 volt there. Yes. This means that in a length of 5 meter, the potential drop by 20 volt. If in a length of 5 meter, the potential drops by 20 volt, it means that the potential gradient, which is the potential drop per unit length, is 20 by 5. 20 by 5 means 4 volt per meter. So in 1 meter of length, the potential drops by 4 volt. So in 2 meter of length, the potential will drop by 8 volt. Simple. So you will say VA minus VB equals to 20 by 5, the potential gradient, the potential drop per unit length multiplied by length, that gives you 8 volt. Easy. Now let's understand potentiometer a little bit more. If no current flows through the galvanometer, in which case you have got here this circuit. So what is this circuit? Do not worry. Look at it carefully. Rather than just giving you 2 points A and B, now I have connected a battery and a galvanometer. So there is a wire of length 10 meter. At the two ends of the wire, the potential is 200 volt and 20 volt. Okay. So this wire is of length 10 meter, and at the two end of the wire, the potential is 200 volt and 20 volt. You have connected a battery with a series galvanometer between 2 points A and B. And this has been mentioned that no current flows through the galvanometer. If no current flows through the galvanometer, what will be the potential drop across galvanometer? The galvanometer is like a resistance. If you have a resistance and no current flows through it, the potential drop across the resistance will be 0. Good. If no current flows through the galvanometer and this cell are in series, tell me what will be the current through the cell? So 0. Now, when a cell gets discharged, the potential drop across it is E minus IR. When the cell gets charged, then the potential drop across it is E plus IR. But when no current flows through the cell, what is the potential drop across the cell? So just substitute I equals to 0 here or here. So we say that the potential drop across the cell is equal to its EMF when no current flows through it, right? Now since no current flows through the cell, the potential drop across the cell has to be equals to EMF. So beta, if I take here the potential as VA minus E, no current through galvanometer, so here also VA minus E, and this VA minus E has to be equals to VB. This means that VA minus VB has to be equals to EMF of the cell. So what we actually do in the lab, we take a wire, we create a potential drop across it. We call this particular wire the potentiometer wire. Then if we know what is the potential gradient of this wire. What is the potential drop per unit length for this wire? We can calculate the EMF of a cell. We say that if we take the cell, a real world cell having some internal resistance and a galvanometer, and then we move the jockey on the wire. If we find a particular length at which no current flows through the cell, we say that between these 2 points, the potential drop has to be same as that of EMF of the cell. So if this length is X and potential drop per unit length of the potentiometer wire is K, we say that the EMF of the cell has to be nothing but the potential drop per unit length multiplied by length of the wire, which balances this cell. So the EMF of the cell has to be Kx. Now here, your mission is to use this diagram and tell me what is the EMF of this cell. So you will say, sir, see, in a length of 10 meter, the potential drops by 180 volt. So if in a length of 10 meter, the potential drops by 180 volts. So in a length of 1 meter, the potential will drop by 180 by 10 volt, right? Now this 180 by 10 volt is the potential drop in 1 meter length of wire. This is the potential gradient. So in 4 meter length of wire, how much will be the potential drop? So you will say the potential drop between point A and B, that is VA minus VB, will be equals to 180 by 10, which is the potential drop in 1 meter length, multiplied by the length between A and B, which is 4. So this will be the potential drop. So you will say here E has to be equal to 180 by 10 into 4. The EMF of the cell has to be same as the potential difference between point A and B, and the potential difference between point A and B has to be equals to the potential gradient 180 by 10 multiplied by the length between A and B, 4. Game over. So you will say 10 10 get cancelled. This comes out to be 18 into 4, which is 36 into 2, that is 72 volt. Okay. Sir, I haven't understood. Let's practice one more example. Question is, if the galvanometer needle shows no deflection, here we have got a galvanometer whose needle is showing no deflection. Question is, what is the value of X? So here you can see in the left end, the potential is 200 volt. On the right end, the potential is 150 volt. So in a length of 10 meter, the potential drops by 150 volt. So no current will flow through the galvanometer when the potential difference between point A and B is same as that of EMF of cell. Now question is, in how much length you will find a potential drop of 40 volt. So you will say that, sir, in the length of 10 meter, the potential drop is 150. So in how much length the potential drop will be 40. So you will say 40, the potential drop has to be equals to potential gradient, which is 200 minus 50 by 10, which is 150 by 10 into the length X. So from here, you can cancel out this, and X comes out to be 40 by 15, and 40 by 15 cancelling out by factor of 5 is nothing but 8 by 3 meter. So this cell of 40 volt will balance across a length of 8 by 3 meter. So let's move on. So now let's talk more about potentiometer circuit. Now in potentiometer, there is something called a primary circuit. What is the meaning of primary circuit? Let's see. So there is a battery of, let's say, some EMF E having some internal resistance R, and this battery is connected to a wire via thick metal plates. Why do we use thick metal plates? I have told this already while teaching you meter bridge. When you have got thick metal plates, their cross-sectional area is large, and we know that resistance equals to rho L by A. So if the cross-sectional area will be large, the resistance of this metal plates will be small. Now, because of the EMF of the cell, some current flows in the circuit. When some current flows in the circuit, there is some potential drop across this wire. This wire is called the potentiometer wire. Since some current flows through it and it's a thin wire, it has a higher resistance, there is some potential drop across this wire. So you say that this is potentiometer wire, let's say of resistance R having a length L, and here we have got this cell. This is called the primary cell. Primary cell is the one which drives current in the potentiometer wire, hence creating a potential drop across the potentiometer wire. So big question is, what is the current in this primary circuit? So you will say, since a cell of EMF E drives the current, the cell has internal resistance R and the resistance of potentiometer wire is given by capital R. So the current in this primary circuit has to be nothing but EMF upon the resistance of the loop, which is capital R plus small r. Once you know what is the current in this primary circuit, you can find out what is the potential drop across the potentiometer wire, because the potential drop across the potentiometer wire has to be nothing but the resistance times the current flowing through it. So you can say potential drop across the potentiometer wire, which is given by V wire, is nothing but the current flowing in the primary circuit multiplied by resistance of the potentiometer wire. Now, here if we substitute the value of IP, which is nothing but EMF upon resistance of the circuit, we get that the potential drop across the potentiometer wire is current in the circuit E upon R plus R multiplied by resistance of the potentiometer wire. We are interested in something called potential gradient or potential drop per unit length. So we will say that the potential gradient developed in this wire has to be nothing but the potential drop across the wire divided by the length of the wire. So we say potential gradient developed in this wire. What is the meaning of gradient? The change per unit length. So the potential gradient developed in this wire has to be nothing but the potential drop across the wire divided by the length of the wire, and we have already found that the potential drop across the wire has to be nothing but current in the wire multiplied by its resistance, and current in the wire is nothing but EMF of the circuit upon the total resistance in the circuit. So you get the potential gradient to be equals to ER upon R plus R. This is the potential drop across the wire divided by the length of the wire. So this is something you should know how to find. It's very easy. So they might give you question like, if there is a primary circuit in which the cell is of EMF, let's say 10 volt, the internal resistance is 1 ohm, and we have got a potentiometer wire of length 5 meter and having a resistance of 4 ohm. Determine the potential gradient. So it's quite easy. You will say that the current in this circuit has to be nothing but the EMF of the driving cell 10 volt divided by resistance of the loop, which is 1 plus 4, 5. So the current has to be 2 ampere. This 2 ampere of current flows through the potentiometer wire as well. So the potential drop across the potentiometer wire will be nothing but the current flowing through it 2 multiplied by its resistance, which is 4. So that gives you 8 volt. Once you know what is the potential drop across potentiometer wire, you can find out the potential gradient. It will be nothing but the potential drop 8 upon the length of the wire, which is 5. That's all. One more thing. If you know that the potential gradient is K, potential drop per unit length is K, this means that in a length X of wire, the potential drop will be nothing but K into X. Keep this in mind. Now, if you have got a length X of wire, in a length X of wire, the potential drop will be nothing but K into X. Potential drop per unit length multiplied by length. Substituting the value of K to be equals to ER upon R plus R into L, you get that the potential drop equals to ER upon R plus R divided by L into X. So I have just substituted the value of K. Do not try to remember this formula. Put it in your linked memory, and this is not at all rocket science. You just have to remember, if the potential drop per unit length, the potential gradient is K, then the potential drop in a length X has to be Kx. So let's move on with one example. The question goes like, there is a battery of 5 volt which has got internal resistance of 1 ohm. There is a potentiometer wire 10 meter long having a resistance of 24 ohm. Question is, determine the potential gradient across the potentiometer wire. So no need to mug up any ugly formula. What you will say here is that this cell drives the current. The resistance of the circuit is 1 plus 24, 25. So I know what is the current in the circuit. That will be 5 divided by 25. I also know what is the potential drop across the potentiometer wire. The potential drop across the potentiometer wire has to be its resistance 24 multiplied by current in the loop. So since I know current in the loop, resistance of the potentiometer wire, I know what is the potential drop across the potentiometer wire, and dividing that potential drop with the length of the potentiometer wire, I will get the potential gradient. So you will say the current in the circuit has to be 5 upon 24 plus 1, that is 25. So you get 1 by 5 ampere. This is the current. Now the potential drop across the potentiometer wire has to be nothing but the current flowing through it multiplied by its resistance, which is 24. So you get 1 by 5 into 24, and 1 by 5 into 24 gives you 4.8 volt. Now once you know that the potential drop in a length of 10 meter is 4.8 volt, then what is the potential gradient? So potential gradient is nothing but potential drop 4.8 divided by the length, which is 10 meter. So what you get here is 4.8 divided by 10, which is 0.48 volt per meter. That's how easy it is. Let's move on. Now, usage of potentiometer. Potentiometer is a super duper awesome device. It's a very versatile device. It cannot just be used to compare potential drop. It can be used to compare two resistances. It can be used to determine the internal resistance of a cell. And on different usages of potentiometer, question comes in competitive examinations every year. So you should know all different type of usages of potentiometer. So let's start with the first usage to compare the EMF of two cells. Let's say you have got this potentiometer circuit. This is called the primary circuit. You want to compare the EMF of two cells. So you connect the first cell with the potentiometer and find out the balance point. What is the meaning of balance point? The point for which no current flows through the galvanometer. When no current flows through the galvanometer, the potential drop across galvanometer will be zero. The potential drop across the internal resistance of cell will be zero. So the potential drop across the cell will be nothing but its EMF. So you will say if a cell of EMF E1 get balances at a length x1, it means that when touched at 2 points separated by distance x on the potentiometer wire, no current flows. It means that this EMF has to be same as the potential drop in a length x1. So you will say that E1 has to be equals to kx1, where k is the potential gradient of this potentiometer wire. Similarly, you can take another cell of, let's say, EMF E2 and balance this another cell also on the potentiometer wire. Now let's say no current flows through the galvanometer when the length of the potentiometer wire connected is x2. So you can say if no current flows through the galvanometer, there will be no potential drop across galvanometer, there will be no potential drop across the internal resistance, there will be potential drop only because of EMF. So E2 has to be equals to kx2. Now if in the lab you have taken these two readings, x1 and x2, by using them you can find the ratio of the two EMF. So one can say that E1 by E2 dividing both the sides has to be nothing but x1 by x2. So this is how, using a potentiometer circuit in the lab, you can compare the EMF of two cells. Isn't it fun? Let's see a question based on it. Two cells when balanced across potentiometer in same polarity sense balances across a length of 80 centimeter, and when in reverse polarity sense they balance at 20 centimeter of length. Find the ratio of EMF of larger to smaller. So when the two cells are connected in same polarity sense and balanced across a potentiometer wire, the balance length comes out to be 80 centimeter. And when these two same cells are balanced across the potentiometer but in reverse polarity sense, then they balance across a length of 20 centimeter. So your mission here is to find the ratio of the EMF of the two cells, larger to smaller. So you will say, think of the first case when both are connected in same polarity sense, and you will say that if this line is balanced across a potentiometer, then the EMF across this line has to be E1 plus E2. So you will say E1 plus E2 has to be equals to K into 80, where K is the potential drop per unit length and 80 is the length at which the potentiometer balances this combination. When connected in reverse polarity sense, you will say that if no current flows in this line, which is when you are taking the reading, so the potential drop across the line will be E1 minus E2, and this balances at 20 centimeter of length, so this has to be equals to K into 20. Game over. If you have written these two equations, you have got the ratio of E1 to E2. How? So simply divide both the sides. So you will get E1 plus E2 upon E1 minus E2 equals to 80 by 20, which is 4. So you get E1 plus E2 upon E1 minus E2 equals to 4. Now bring this E1 minus E2 to the right hand side. So you get E1 plus E2 equals to 4E1 minus 4E2. Bring the terms of E1 on one side and E2 on other side. So here you will get, bringing the term of E1 on one side and E2 on other side, you will get 5E2, bringing this here equals to 3E1. Or bachcho, you will say that E1 by E2 equals to 5 by 3. Do check that you have reported the answer as larger to smaller ratio. Yes, we have. So it's right. Now, how do we use potentiometer to compare two resistances? Let's understand this now. So, comparison of resistances for two resistors. Now, beta, first of all, understand this. If you have got, let's say, two resistors, R1 and R2, and you have connected them to a cell, assume that this cell is ideal. If I ask you what is the potential drop across R1, so you will say, sir, whatever is the current going in the circuit multiplied by R1. And I ask you what is the potential drop across R2, you will say, sir, whatever is the current going in the circuit multiplied by R2. So what we do in the lab is that we take the potentiometer wire. There is a primary circuit above it, which I am not drawing. You first find the balance length across R1. So you can say that I into R1 has to be equals to, let's say this gets balances at a length x1, kx1. Then you remove the galvanometer from here. Then you think of the R1 and R2 combination and then again find out a new balance length. So you join the potentiometer wire between these 2 points and find out a new balance length. Now when no current flows through the galvanometer, the potential drop here has to be same as the potential drop there. Let's say you get the new balance length for a length x2. So you will write the second equation, I into R1 plus R2 equals to K into x2. Now by taking these two readings x1 and x2 in the lab, you can find out the ratio of R1 and R2. How? Let's see. So first, you need to connect the series combination of the two resistances you are comparing to a secondary cell, to a new cell. This is the primary cell which drives the current in the potentiometer wire to some other cell. Because of this other cell, forget the two connections. Now there are two loops, one the potentiometer loop and one the secondary loop. Now this secondary cell drives the current in the secondary loop. You connect the galvanometer at a point here. So now the potentiometer is connected at 2 points and these 2 points will give you the potential drop across the resistor R1. And let's say you get the balance reading at distance x1. So you will say I into R1 has to be equals to kx1. Now you again connect the potentiometer wire with this secondary loop, but now this way. So you will say now if I get the new balance length as x2, then the potential drop across this series combination of R1 and R2 has to be same as the potential drop in a length x2 of the potentiometer wire. So you will write the second equation as I into R1 plus R2 equals to kx2. Now sir, how to find the ratio of resistances? Divide both the side. So when you divide both the side, you will get IR1 upon IR1 plus R2, that gives you simply R1 upon R1 plus R2 equals to kx1 upon kx2, that gives you x1 by x2. Now once you have got this, you can say that R1 into x2 cross multiply, you have got R1 upon R1 plus R2 equals to x1 by x2. So cross multiply, so you will get R1 into x2 equals to R1 into x1 plus R2 into x1. So now we will bring the terms of R1 on one side and R2 on other side and we will rewrite the equation. So bringing this term of R1 on the left hand side, we will get R1 times x2 minus x1 equals to R2 x1. So the ratio of resistances R1 by R2, bring this R2 down, has to be equals to x1 upon x2 minus x1. And this is how you can find the ratio of the two resistances. So one can say potentiometer is such a versatile device that it can even do the work of meter bridge. It can be used to compare two resistances. Now let's look at the third application of potentiometer, that is determining the internal resistance of a cell. Before we do this, I want to ask you a simple question. If you have a cell of, let's say, EMF E, internal resistance R, and you connect it with one more resistance R. My question is, can you tell me in one liner what will be the potential drop across the cell as it discharges? So usually students know that the potential drop across a discharging cell is E minus IR, and they know that the current in this loop is going to be E upon R plus R, so multiplied by R. So what they get is, taking the common denominator as r plus r, they will write ER plus ER minus ER upon r plus r. So that becomes, kids, ER upon r plus r. Now this took you some time. Even if 10 seconds, it took you some time. What I tell kids is, can I say that the potential drop across this cell has to be same as the potential drop across the resistance R, capital R? Yes. Why? Because, sir, they are in parallel. And I know that the current going in this circuit is going to be E upon R plus R. So the potential drop across this resistance R has to be nothing but the current in the circuit multiplied by R. So ER upon R plus R. So the potential drop across this discharging cell has to be same as the potential drop across this resistance R. So that will be nothing but current into resistance. So, sir, what are you trying to tell here? I'm just trying to tell you the faster way to write the potential drop across the discharging cell. So for example, if tomorrow you see this question, that here we have got a cell of, let's say, 6 volt, and this is 1 ohm and this is 2. Somebody asks you, when the cell discharges, what is the potential drop across the cell? My guidelines are, first of all, find the current in the circuit. So you will say current in the circuit has to be 6 by 3, that has to be 2 ampere. Now the potential drop across the cell has to be same as the potential drop across this 2 ohm resistor. So the potential drop here will be nothing but 2 into 2, 4 volt. So the potential drop across this discharging cell has to be 4 volt. You can even use E minus IR and write 6 minus 2 into 1. That gives you 4 volt. It has to be, they are in parallel, right? So why have you taught us this before you are teaching determining the internal resistance of a cell? What we do here is, there are steps. First, we take the secondary cell whose internal resistance has to be measured, and we find out the balance length. We know that when we are finding out balance length, no current flows through the galvanometer and no current flows through the internal resistance. So the potential drop across the cell, which is nothing but the EMF of the cell, gets balanced at a length x1. And we can write the equation as ES has to be equals to kx1. This is the first condition. So first, take the cell, balance it across the potentiometer wire and find the balance length. This is what you have to do in the lab. Then, sir, then you connect one more resistance to this secondary cell. Because of connecting one more resistance, a current starts to circulate in the secondary circuit. When the current starts to circulate in the secondary circuit, now the potential drop across the cell is less than before. Why? Because the cell is discharging. So you connect a known resistor, to this cell. When I say you connect a known resistor, it means that you connect a resistor whose resistance is known to this secondary cell, whose internal resistance you are trying to find. Our mission is to find RS. Now once you connect it, some current starts to flow in the secondary circuit. The direction of arrow here is wrong. Since some current starts to flow in the secondary circuit, now the potential drop across the cell is less than ES, is less than the EMF of the cell. And now let's say this parallel combination of cell and one more resistance is balanced at a length x2. Now can you tell what will be the potential drop across the cell? Okay, sir, this is why you taught us that thing, right? You can say that the potential drop across the cell has to be nothing but potential drop across this parallel resistance. And the potential drop across this parallel resistance will be equals to ES upon R plus RS. So this is the current multiplied by the resistance. So you will say that IS has to be equals to ES upon R plus RS, and potential drop across the cell has to be same as the potential drop across this parallel resistance. So that will be current ES upon R plus RS multiplied by R. Now this potential drop is getting balanced at a length x2, so you can write this to be equals to kx2. Once you have written these two equations, game over. So you will say ES equals to kx1. Second equation, ES upon R plus RS into R equals to kx2. In place of ES, if you substitute kx1 from the first equation, the k get cancelled. So what you get here is R upon R plus RS equals to x2 by x1. And then you can rearrange and solve to find the value of RS. How? Let's see. You will say, dividing both the sides, ES get cancelled. You get R plus RS upon R equals to x1 by x2. Do it on your own, you will get the same thing. Now, you can write R plus RS upon R to be same as 1 plus RS by R. So you get 1 plus RS by R equals to x1 by x2. Bring this term of 1 to the right hand side. So you get RS by R equals to x1 by x2 minus 1, and then multiply this R here. So you get the internal resistance of the cell is nothing but R into x1 by x2 minus 1. That do we need to remember this formula? You wish to remember, remember. You do not wish to remember, do not remember. I tell all my kids to remember the procedure rather than the formula for their competitive examination. So remember the procedure rather than the result. What is the procedure? First, connect the cell whose internal resistance has to be found and balance it across the potentiometer wire. Let's say the balance length comes out to be x1. You can say that the EMF of this cell is nothing but kx1. Then connect a known resistance to this cell whose internal resistance has to be found and again find the balance length. This time let's say the balance length is x2. So you will write the second equation, the potential drop across the cell when it gets balances at a length x2 has to be same as the potential drop across this parallel resistance R, and that has to be equals to kx2. From these two equations you can find out the value of internal resistance of the cell. But since it's an important topic, remembering the formula will also not do you any harm. So let's practice a question based on this thing. So the question goes like, a cell when connected to a potentiometer balance at a length of 50 centimeter. So when only the cell is connected to the potentiometer wire, it balances at a length of 50 centimeter. When the cell is connected to a resistance of 10 ohm, when the cell is connected to a resistance of 10 ohm and again balanced, the potentiometer is balanced at 40 centimeter length. So first, when you only connect the cell, it balances at 50 centimeter. When you connect the cell with a resistance of 10 ohm, the new balance length is 40 centimeter. You need to find the internal resistance. One method is that you can say that the internal resistance has to be equals to the known resistance, in this case which is given as 10, into the balance length before connecting to cell, which is x1 50, upon balance length after connecting to known resistance, which is 40 minus 1. So here you get 10 into 5 by 4 minus 1. 5 by 4 minus 1 is 1 by 4. 1 by 4 into 10 gives you 2.5 ohm. This is 1. But what I suggest, students, you might not remember this formula on your judgment day, though it is easy to remember taking care of dimensions, that since the first length has to be bigger than second, so you get x1 by x2 minus 1. Since you are subtracting 1, x1 has to be more than x2, so first length is bigger, so you get first length upon second length, and then you have to multiply it with the known resistance to get the internal resistance. You can remember the formula if you can, otherwise I always recommend go from the scratch. So here you will say that when you balance the cell across the potentiometer wire, you get that the EMF of the cell is balanced across a length of 50 centimeter. So EMF has to be K into 50. Now when you connect this cell with a known resistance of 10 ohm, now the potential drop across the cell will be same as the potential drop across this 10 ohm. So you will say that the current in the loop will be E upon 10 plus R multiplied by the known resistance 10, and this get balanced at 40 centimeter of length. So this potential drop across the 10 ohm, which is same as the potential drop across this cell, comes out to be equals to K into 40. Now dividing both the side, you will get R1 plus 10 upon 10 is nothing but 50 by 40. So you get here 5 by 4. So here you will get 4R plus 40. If I have written R plus 10 by 10 equals to 5 by 4, cross multiplying, you will get 4R plus 40 equals to 50. Bring this 40 on the right hand side, so you get 4R equals to 10, or R comes out to be 2.5. So that's all in this hour. In the next hour, we will start the topic of capacitor. I know many of you do not like capacitor, but if you have got problem understanding capacitor, the tip is here. Do revise the conductor part taught in electrostatics before you start capacitor, because that is deeply connected with the topics we are going to learn in capacitor. So see you guys in next hour. Bye bye. So that's all for now. See you guys in the next hour.